and welcome to another episode of Doubl3Tap. Today we are joined by Ben. Hello, Ben. Currently working as a Chief Strategy Officer at Zebedee and previously at LakeStar. Yeah, how are you, man?
I'm good, thank you, Jackal. Good to see you again, and hi, Alex.
Cool. So quick disclosures out the way. This content is for entertainment purposes only, should not be considered as financial advice. The opinions shared by Alex and I are our own, and we may have investments in some of the assets or companies spoken about today, but not Zebedee, unfortunately. When token Zebedee, I wish, like, with all my heart. Yeah, okay. Anyway, Ben, what are you currently playing at the moment, games-wise?
That's a good question. I'm playing a game on mobile called Homegrown, which is a rewarded game using our tech. But advertising aside, I just think it's a really fun game. It's like Heyday if you ever played that. On PC and console though, I've honestly been struggling to find time. I started Starfield and then churned, and now I'm trying to find my new thing to hook me in.
Highly recommend Helldivers. I don't know.
Oh, yeah?
What your kind of favorite types of games are, but I've been just
server limits capped, bro. They reached the server limit. I don't think you could play if you wanted to.
Bro, Alpha
that should be trendy. Say Pal World, but no.
Yeah, Pal World's pretty good too. But Helldivers, if you get one of your friends into the server, you can invite through Steam to get people to bypass the server queue.
Okay,
that's
interesting.
The actual Alpha.
It's like Starship Troopers, right?
Cool.
Yeah, it's like what Starship Troopers should have been, in my opinion. It's fantastic. Yeah. Highly recommend it. Yeah. Anyways, okay, cool. Back to the topic at hand. Okay, so Ben, just to kind of kick it off. So when you're chatting with like traditional gaming developers, developers outside of Web3, curious, how do you sell kind of the Lightning Network as a payment rail to the studio?
I mean, most of how we position Lightning centers on what it's really solving for the games industry. We don't really go into too much crypto speak, to be honest. I tend to find it gets lost on games developers, and a lot of the times as well, it's not truly relevant to what they're looking for. You know, if you work in gaming, you care about user monetization, and then within that, is it IAP or is it ads? You care about the cost of acquiring those users. You care about retention, engagement, and then within the game itself, there's design and art and such. It's very rare that you would spend considerable time speaking about payments. So we tend to come at it from the sense of the scale of the payments. You know, we concentrate on mobile gaming, and a lot of these casual titles, the margins on them and the monetization of them on a per user basis is very small. It's, measured in dollars and cents. And, the gist of it is if you're trying to reward a user 3 cents, 5 cents, some sort of very small amount, how are you going to pay that to them? And that's where the Lightning Network comes in, right? If you try and do that over a banking rail, it's not cost effective. If you try to do it over 95% plus of most crypto rails, it's not feasible or economical. So far, Lightning's the only one that has stood up, and now for sort of 5-6 years, as a really good mechanism for microtransactions. And when I say microtransactions, I mean like sub $1. There's a lot of in the fiat world, a microtransaction is like sub $10. In the crypto world, we speak in cents, but even then within crypto, there's nuance, right? And the great thing about Lightning is it can go below 1 cent, so you can get really, really small, and then you're in sort of what we call nano transactions. So the only constraint on Lightning's ability to transact is your internet bandwidth and then the liquidity you have in the Lightning Network. It isn't a blockchain, if that's like a good place to start. So you've got fiat rails, which are like, Windows 95 or something. They're just ancient. They haven't been updated since the 80s. Everything is like really archaic. It's like stepping back in time. Along comes Bitcoin in 2009, and then along comes crypto shortly thereafter, and everyone starts racing to scale things up and see who can process transactions. Lightning's innovation is really that it said, okay, you've got this blockchain on the base layer. why don't we not build a blockchain on the second layer? Why don't we see if we can batch the transactions a different way? And the only requirement really from someone who owns the asset is that they have to lock it up in a big liquid pool that can then be sent around instantly. So when you get to that kind of level of understanding, you start to realize, well, you're moving it off chain, you're moving at internet speed at that point, as I said, and therefore you can start to transact globally with really no, we haven't really found the theoretical upper limit of how many transactions per second Lightning can process yet, because it is just the bandwidth is the cap, just like, the internet. What I will say, though, to be, keep things real is, in terms of dollar value, there are definite constraints. There's certainly a threshold at which it is more economical to process a transaction on chain on Bitcoin than go onto Lightning. Probably, finger in the air, and obviously the price moves all the time, but around like the $5,000 mark, $10,000 mark, you'll probably start to experience payment failures or payments hanging. But I think that hopefully that answers your question. It's like the gist of it is super fast, super small payments globally.
And you've talked at length about, from like the infrastructure or the back end, what Lightning facilitates. But I'm curious, given that you guys have worked with a handful of different games, different types of games, different genres, have you found that these nano transactions, in your words, are kind of incentivizing a different type of player behavior? Or I guess, where I'm coming from with this question is like, what are some of the emergent sort of downstream effects of using Lightning or, a different type of payment rails that exists on chain for players?
So the lens through which we look at this is in the game rewards market. So there are quite a few players out there rewarding gamers to do certain actions. The biggest product in gaming advertising is rewarded video. Watch this video, get 5 gems, or accelerate your build time 20%, or some sort of in-game incentive exists there to engage with some kind of rewarded product. We're taking it like one step further, and we're saying, we're taking the old adage of like spend a little to make a little. So if you actually move from not just like dilutive rewards, and the reason I say dilutive is that if you're giving out gems, if you're giving out, things that accelerate gameplay, then you have to consider the impact of balance on your game, etc. But if you give out something non-dilutive, i.e. a share of your revenue, you actually get the highest engagement, and it's really quite substantial. You're talking about like 3 to 4x what your baseline might be. We just did we're just about to put out a case study we did with Playember publicly. I think it's in your guys' research report. But day 14 ARPU for their titles increased 380 odd % off the top of my head. It means massive jumps, and this comes from spend a little to get a little, right? Take 10, 20, 30% of your revenue, share it with the player, rewarding your most loyal players, rewarding people who are the most engaged with your product, and they will keep playing. And they also become evangelists for you. We often say sort of internally to each other, like when people say, why would you do this? Well, you've got 5,000 solitaire titles out there on the app stores. How do you differentiate yourself? Well, all of them are free and they don't give you anything in return. So I'm going to play the one that's free and pays me. And the one that pays me also reliably and like it says it does, because there's, of course, rewarded games are out there in the app stores claiming to pay you in fiat, and you'll see their like ad campaigns, and it's like people going like, whoa, with their eyes exploding, and they've made like 500 quid or something from playing this game. That's until you read the terms and conditions and you see all the like asterisks on how to withdraw and how it's all restricted, and actually it's going to take you 3 months and blah, 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 blah. Well, like here's a gaming experience where, okay, you made 2 cents, but you made that 2 cents in 20 minutes, and hey, no strings attached. You've like got it straight away. And if you play all day, maybe it's $1. If you play multiple games every day, maybe it's $5, $6. We're definitely starting to see that kind of behavior occur within our ecosystem, where people are hopping from one Zebedee powered game to the next as part of their daily kind of streaks. And we're thinking about that behavior as well.
I had something written down that I wanted to ask, but as soon as you said that last bit, the first thing that popped into my head was like, this sounds like a bot nightmare, or just a perfect honeypot to attract bots, especially when there was like that meme going around with like the 100 phones, strapped in.
Pretty sure that was someone playing some Zebedee
like probably
games.
a legit like video from 6 months ago. But yeah, I think like it's obvious, right? But what does that fall on the game developer to have like KYC procedures? Is it on you guys to know your customer before you take them, like funnel them to the games?
That's a really good point to dive in on. So, we're taking the approach of being very upfront and honest about this. I think other players in the Web3 game space have been a little more cagey on the bot issue within this environment. If you stick up a big sign saying free money and you stick lights all around it, like, don't be surprised if a load of people turn up trying to exploit it, right? Or trying to find a way to get the free money without even the time investment. So yes, bots exist. Yes, bots are a problem. I would say 2 years ago, it is now 2 years ago. Gosh, maybe just under. But anyway, when we had fun games rolling out Bitcoin Miner, and Bitcoin Miner actually became a hit quite quickly, and we were surprised. I remember Paul calling me and being like, "Wow, we're being inundated with bots," and we hadn't thought to check with them about client side and server side security and how to like lock up the app and make it much more difficult for someone to exploit. So we actually we do view that as somewhat our responsibility. So we actually started working with them and we used it as a learning process. Subsequently, coming out of that, we released a product called Zebedee Shield, which automates a lot of like very time-consuming security checks that games developers should do if they're paying out free money. So we don't really at this point, because we're now combining multiple things and doing a lot more than we were. We don't really talk about the security procedures we're doing because it's like whack-a-mole with hackers, right? So it's not really a good idea to give away the tricks we're doing. But the gist of it now is as of this quarter, we've rolled out our most substantial security yet, which is actually packaged now into our upcoming SDK for Unity. And this includes like a ton of bot prevention measures. Like we're watching multiple things. We're counting devices. We're looking at actual gameplay events. We're looking at like regions. We're looking at code integrity. Like there's a lot of stuff we're now doing on behalf of developers. And before developers go live, we also sort of advise them or recommend that they actually let us do a security review. And we have like a small white hat hacking team that basically tries and cracks the game over the course of a week. And then we give them like our report of what we've seen. We're getting pretty confident now that it's down in low single-digit percentages in terms of activity on the platform and around this ecosystem. But every game is different. People do find ways of exploiting your game. The real trick is actually to expect it, anticipate it, sort of be proactive and instead of reactive. In some of the games developers we work with, actually in their own Discord communities, they encourage hackers to show exploits and they reward them with more Bitcoin if they go public with it. So if they say like, oh, I found this memory leak and I like was able to inject some arbitrary thing there and I could take out $5, then they go, great, here's $5 more. Thanks for sharing that. And then that person becomes an advocate of the game. So there's different ways of approaching it. But the short of it is it's a very real thing. Don't worry too much these days, but definitely like know that it's there. It's definitely, I think it's endemic within the crypto space, to be honest.
I want to zoom in a little bit on the recent Splitgate tournament that you guys did. And I think you had some interesting, or I kind of just want to hear you explain the metrics a bit and like what stood out to you specifically when it comes to how you did the activation and like what you saw in terms of player behavior.
Yeah, this was exciting for a few reasons. Like I back in my days at LakeStar as a VC, I did invest in Splitgate. So small disclaimer that I don't actually maintain any carry in LakeStar. I gave that up to join Zebedee, but I do have a relationship with that team that's quite close. And they gave us an enormous favor, but in terms of letting us actually work with them and doing a proper, company approved, IP approved integration with their technology. And it allowed us to actually, integrate with both a non-mobile title, so a PC title, our first Unreal title as well, and actually think a little bit more deeply about what was the play experience going to be for the user. So we came up with essentially we wanted to run this in a time limited basis because it was really an experiment. We were going to test a couple of new monetization models around competitive first person shooter gaming. And I'm a competitive FPS player. So one of the first things Zebedee ever did was we put Bitcoin in Counter-Strike. And that was like that was 2020, I think 2021. We did it at the beginning of COVID. And that was very popular. Like it had, for quite a niche thing, it picked up tens of thousands of users very quickly. But CSGO is an old game. And then, we knew CS2 was coming and it became pretty non-core. So ultimately, we just kind of let it sit there and then wound up sunsetting it. And it also wasn't an official integration. So we wanted to step things up and do something more material. And that's what Splitgate was. So over Christmas, we did a tournament where we gave away half a Bitcoin to the winning teams. And that was in a structured tournament. So that part was cool in that when you finished a match, you got paid instantly. That's already like quite a big, if you're into the esports world, that's already quite a big difference, right? Like you normally had to you have to fill out all these forms. You have to wait for the wire transfer to be initiated. Then if you're in a foreign country, that can take a few weeks and then you get hit with a tax bill afterwards, blah, blah, blah. So with our platform, we actually pre-built a lot of things so you could actually do that paperwork ahead of joining the tournament. Then once you've done that paperwork, as soon as the match ended, you were paid. And then you could cash out to whatever platform you wanted. We were predominantly pushing Cash App as our partner there, not in an official capacity, but more in just it was the fastest route to dollars. So if we did have Splitgate players who, frankly, didn't give a toss about Bitcoin, so they just wanted the dollars. So we helped facilitate that by showing them how to cash out instantly through Lightning. And then there was the more exciting stuff, the real experiments. So that was around the tournament, we encouraged the community to do these basically PvP wagers. And that would mean okay, the tournament's going on. I'm watching the live stream. I'm feeling hyped about Splitgate. I love this game. It looks fun. So I hit up the Discord and I go, yo, Jackal, I bet I could beat you. How about we go one-on-one in a server and, I'll go for $1.50 or something like that. And it's like, okay, nice. So I then log into Zebedee's Infuse, which is the product that Splitgate appeared in. And I log in with my Steam ID. I link Zebedee by scanning a QR code, kind of like pairing WhatsApp. And then the app is authorized to debit my account and pay to my account. So you can then create a server. And when you create that server, it gives you a password. I would DM you that password, and then we join a custom game. And that game is rigged up to pay out Bitcoin. So then as I'm killing you, because I would win, I'm good at Splitgate, I start winning sats in real time as I'm getting points, because we were measuring it off the game's points. We could actually read events off the server and we could trigger payments when it was if it was a headshot, we could pay 2x. If it was you killed someone through a portal, we could pay 2x. So we did all these little tricks. And the gist of it was in promoting this feature and encouraging the community to do it, we generated, on top of the roughly 25 grand that we paid out in Bitcoin, we generated another 10% increase in additional spend from the community that was participating. So it's about 2.5K that they spent in micro wagering with each other. And it worked out to about $4.90 per player in additional spend around this tournament. So you had this whole new revenue stream opened up around an esports activation, which was the ability to monetize users competing with one another. Because every single time one of these matches took place, the house had a fee for providing the infrastructure and the service, right? So you're generating new directly monetizing the user base and generating new revenue around esports. We think that's quite encouraging as a first step. The esports industry has really struggled for a business model beyond advertising. I'm pretty convinced that this is it, that you go pro and you compete for money. It makes sense to the first person shooter player in me. The other side of it was in the final week, we had a bit of Bitcoin to give away. We were feeling quite bullish. So we introduced this like free to play mode where it was basically like, it doesn't matter if you get match made because all the matchmaking is happening on the server. So that's not like, sorry, on the Discord server. So that's not actually automated. That meant that like, you know, I don't know, Alex, you're in the West Coast, right? So we might not be able to find a convenient time to play. It might be a bit challenging, right? So instead you can just do this quick free to play mode and it'll match you up as normal, but it also might chuck in a few bots. And the bigger point was like, who cares? You can get used to playing Splitgate. You can train on Splitgate. You can practice. But the game's paid you for playing, and this was sponsor funded. So we were basically replicating what the mobile developers are doing, but in a PC FPS environment. And the interesting thing there was we had growing activity from the PvP wagering, but then as soon as we introduced this rewarded free-to-play mode, and this was paying out less than 10 cents per game, the wagered matches were more like $1.50, $2. So it was a meaningful reduction in the payout to the player. We had 4x the engagement on that feature. So the number of games being played by all the players, it basically 4x'd. And then the amount of time those players were spending in Splitgate on a daily basis more than doubled. So we had average play times of around 45 minutes going up to like 110 minutes. So it was like super engaging. And that was more proof to us that this like rewarded play thing is a real phenomenon in gaming. And I get that, you know, there's been rewarded ad models in the past and people have looked at this, but it's never really gone to this kind of revenue share basis where the developer publisher's success is the user's success. And it really aligns incentives in terms of time. You know, for Gen Z, time is money. Like we're all hustling. Everyone's like suffering from cost of living, you know, basically society's falling apart in slow motion. So we've all got to like pretend it's not happening. And how about you get a bit of money in your pocket? That makes things feel better, right? So that's the sort of gist of, I think, the sentiment here. And we try not to make a big deal about the fact that we're paying through a crypto rail. Ultimately, it's about like, this game pays you and no other game pays you. Or, well, 100 games do now, but there aren't many PC titles that do this. So we came away feeling, you know, we're really pleased that on the PC, the same model works alongside the potential for new revenue streams around PvP wagering and competition.
I think you just kind of answered part of my question, but would love to dig a little bit deeper. So you talked about different ways to leverage Zebedee as a platform across different types of games, right? So you use Splitgate as an example, like core FPS, competitive shooter. And then we talked about Play Ember, right? Which is a little bit more casual type of genre. So I'm curious, like, what are the different types of ways to leverage these kind of rewards to align incentives between the studio, developers, and the players across different genres? And do you think there's a specific genre or types of games that are best suited today? Specifically like short-term thinking here, just for like other people out there that are interested in trying to leverage something like this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we're still proving quite a lot. I come at it from a slightly reverse perspective, which is that it's definitely true that not all games need to be rewarded. Like to sort of lay the groundwork there. Like some games are works of art. Some games are like fantastic single player experiences. There's no like, I'm not going to enjoy The Last of Us more if like just randomly it starts paying me Bitcoin. It just doesn't make any sense. Like that's not the point of that game. It's a whole like immersive experience. But other games where, you know, I think casual and hybrid casual and hyper casual, whatever casual gaming is calling itself nowadays, I think like that's a particularly ripe segment because it's not so immersive and story and narrative driven. It's much more about, here's a game mechanic that is incredibly popular, whether it's puzzle, whether it's merge, whether it's match 3, whether it's chess, you know, whatever the game mechanic is, it's usually tried and tested and there are multiple products out in the market and they are undifferentiated beyond maybe art or, you know, the ability of a team to acquire users better than another. Here is a point of differentiation in the short term. You know, more and more games will adopt these reward mechanics if it continues to prove successful. But in the short term, you get an arbitrage on your competition. In the medium to long term, you know, I think we're right now zooming in on that, and we're building specific products to serve those customers because the demand is there. We're finding it. So you'll see I touched on it earlier. You'll see an SDK coming from us very soon, which really makes this drag and drop. It's like a super simple ZBD integration for casual mobile titles. If you want to build more customized, more event-driven experiences, the API is there and always has been there and offers the most versatility. Like we like to say that we're the primary consumer of our API. Like if a developer came along with a big enough idea, they could rebuild ZBD, the app, using our API, because that's what we've done. So you can go full-fledged into it if you want, but keeping things on games, genres that I think would do well outside of mobile casual include strategy. I've always had this fantasy of like a Sim City or like a Command and Conquer Tiberian Sun, where one of the resources is Bitcoin mining, simulated, obviously, but ad or IAP funded. But then the game can actually pay you in a way that could be circular within the game, where you have to actually make choices about spending Bitcoin, your resource, back to the game developer to advance and develop your society in a game. So I do think those types of games lend themselves well to it. But it does require, a game developer to come around to thinking, okay, let's use Bitcoin here as money in this economy. That's already a massive step for most games developers. They have very strong opinions about crypto following the last Web3 cycle. So there's a bit of an uphill battle there. But assuming you can get them there, it's then something brand new, right? No one's really done this. There's been a couple of like real money auction houses and stuff in the past, but no one's actually done like a full-on embedded money in a game because it hasn't been possible. So there's a leap in the dark element there that is going to always be a challenge to overcome in the midterm. But I'm pretty sure that those types of games are going to have ridiculous retention, because it's like you can earn from this game, and it will be how good or how efficiently can you run your economy, like your town or your army or whatever it might be. And maybe you walk away with, a fair bit more than your opponent or a fair bit more than the computer, depending on how the developer chooses to actually source the revenue to share with the player.
It's it's definitely clear that getting paid is a great engagement mechanic.
Yeah, funny that.
And that just about wraps it up for this episode. Thank you very much, Ben. It's been incredibly insightful. Enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you both. Pleasure to be here.
The content of this video is intended for informational purposes only and should not be considered as investment advice. The views shared by Alex and I are our own, and we may hold investments in some of the companies or digital assets featured in the video.